Everyone's freaking out about the Saudi Arabia petrodollar contract ending. Now, there's a couple of factors on why this isn't the earth-shattering piece of news like the BRICS bros are convinced that it is.
In a major shift, Saudi Arabia has let the petrodollar agreement expire, opting to sell oil in multiple currencies instead of exclusively using the US dollar. The agreement of the past 50 years expired on June 9.
As per reports, the deal was signed on June 8, 1974, but has expired on June 9, 2024, and the Middle East country has not renewed it. Petrodollar is a term used as the US dollar as the currency for global crude oil transactions.
There was never a petrodollar agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia. Now, I'll give you a little bit more context. There was something going on, but it's not what has been described and it's been circulating. Now, if we look back in the 1970s, there was a thing called the Arab oil embargo going on, and this was causing oil prices to skyrocket, and in lieu of that, inflation was getting out of control. So the US decided to intervene, and this was called the Joint Bilateral Commission on economic cooperation between the two countries. So the US got the Saudis to invest their oil profits into US assets, such as treasuries, etc., and then also sell the oil in US dollars. So that's where the term petrodollar comes from, but there was never a set petrodollar agreement like has been talked about recently. So in return, the US helped the Saudis improve their internal industries so that they would be more robust. Now, let's start with oil markets. Now, if this was such a big deal like the BRICS bros purported to be, we see the oil markets fluctuating quite significantly with this recent news, and the fact that that isn't happening is telling us something. And we would also see the currency markets doing a few things. First of all, the dollar would be falling rapidly in anticipation of this supposed petrodollar agreement from ending. But that's not what we're seeing at all. In fact, the dollar has been going up. If we look at the dollar index here, you can see that the price action has been quite favorable for the US dollar. Now, let's talk about other currencies that could supposedly replace the dollar in trading oil around the world. Now, a lot of the people are saying, well, the Chinese yuan is going to be the replacement petrodollar. But that is not going to be the case. Trust in China's economy is at an all-time low worldwide. And really, given the recent Chinese refusal to output data on things like unemployment in youth at an all-time high in the high 20% range. Now, when considering other currencies that oil could be traded in worldwide and replace the dollar supposedly, well, we have to consider the currency blocks that are convertible in the Forex market to other currencies. So we have the Japanese yen, we have the US dollar, of course, and then we have the euro. So Japanese yen is out of the question because first, it's too small. It's not liquid enough to liquefy all the oil transactions around the world. And also, the Japanese yen currency isn't nationalized. So it doesn't have the capacity to fill that role. And when we're talking about the euro, well, ever since the early 2010s, when they had their own little financial crisis going on, a lot of people's deposits in the euro were kept. And so smart money is scared from using the euro. Russia is having a real ruble collapse happening in real time this past week. Russians are unable to withdraw from their bank accounts, and the Russian index, the MOEX, has stopped trading on the Hong Kong exchange, which is in light of the sanctions. So that's quite a big deal. As much as people like to talk about the proverbial dollar collapse looming, well, that's a whole distraction from the actual ruble collapse happening in real time. So obviously the ruble's out of the question for having the currency be liquid enough to liquefy all the transactions of oil around the world, especially given the sanctions. That's definitely out of the question. And if we look at the pie chart of reserve currencies globally, American dollar is still 60% of world reserve currency, and the euro is quite insignificant, which would be the next currency block the world could consider. Either the euro or the Japanese yen, both of which are too small to facilitate all the oil transactions around the world. Now the Saudis and the US, they're negotiating a security deal like we've never seen before between the two, and this would actually make them closer than ever. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, see what happens, but this is in lieu of the Middle East conflict going on. So Saudi Arabia is feeling a little extra nervous. Now also, they're not fielding any other countries to fulfill the security role that the US can. There's a couple factors why. Well, if we look at the other militaries in the world that are of similar size to US military, well, we're left with China and Russia. And if we look at their navies, it's quite insignificant. Now remember, in order to protect the oil in Saudi Arabia, the Navy is crucial. So if we look at the Chinese Navy, they only have one aircraft carrier in their Navy, and it barely functions. They can barely get a plane off it. But also, the Chinese fleet in their Navy isn't as numerous, not as vast in size, and their ships don't have the same kind of range. So they would have to go from China all the way to Saudi Arabia in time to be able to prevent an attack or something like that. But because of their lack of range, meaning speed and range of fuel to get from point A to point B, that's not going to happen with the Chinese Navy as it is. So another issue is Russia. They don't have a comparable Navy even to China's. So that's out of the picture too. Now, even if this security deal doesn't go through, the US doesn't actually need Saudi Arabia anymore. In fact, as the years go on, we're going to see the US getting out of the globalization model more and more. It's already been happening. Now, the US is the largest oil producer in the world. So Saudi Arabia and the US, it's going to be looking a lot different moving forward. But because the US is 20% of the world's GDP, and if we look at other countries' percentages of GDP worldwide, no one comes even close to that. And the vastness of the dollar, like I've gone over before. So as much as people are freaking out right now, don't let that get to your head, guys. We would see things fluctuating if it really was like what the BRICS Bros are saying. Hey guys, if you got something from this video, YouTube is suggesting that you watch this next video, and I will see you in the next one.